My name is Emily Carter. I'm 17 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your life quietly begins to come apart is that it never announces itself. There's no warning, no dramatic explosion, no single moment you can point to and say, there, that's when everything broke. Sometimes it starts with trust. From the outside, we looked like a perfectly normal family.
Middle class. Suburban. Predictable.
My dad worked in sales. My mom had a part-time administrative job. We had a decent house in Ohio, the kind with a trimmed lawn and neighbors who waved but never really knew you. If someone had asked me back then if I felt safe, I probably would have said yes. But safety, I've learned, isn't about appearances. It's about truth. And in our house, truth was something that got buried under excuses. My parents had a relationship with money that never made sense to me. Even when I was little, I could feel it. They weren't poor, not really. They made enough. But somehow, we were always struggling. Always one bill away from panic. Always talking about tight months and bad luck. And yet, every time money came in, it disappeared just as fast. New TV, impulse shopping, lottery tickets lined up like hope you could scratch into existence. They used to laugh about it. Brag, even. Like being irresponsible was some kind of personality trait they were proud of. People who save are just scared, my dad once said, tossing a losing lottery ticket into the trash. Money is meant to move. My mom nodded like that made perfect sense. I remember standing there, maybe 13, holding a book about budgeting I'd borrowed from the library, and feeling like I was the only adult in the room. I was different. I didn't spend my allowance, I tracked it. I didn't dream about getting rich, I planned for stability. By 14, I understood credit scores better than most adults. Not because anyone taught me, because I didn't trust what I was seeing at home. They used to make fun of me for it. Look at our little accountant, my mom would say, smiling like it was a joke we were all supposed to laugh at. You worry too much, my dad added. You'll miss out on life thinking like that. Maybe. But at least I wouldn't miss out on reality. When I turned 16, they sat me down at the kitchen table. I remember that night too clearly. The way my dad had printed out actual slides, like it was a business presentation. The way my mom kept smiling at me, like she was about to give me something wonderful. We're going to help you build credit, she said. I blinked. Now? Exactly now, my dad said, tapping the table like this was some genius move. Most kids your age don't even think about this stuff. But you're not most kids, my mom added quickly. You're responsible. You're ahead. Something about that should have made me pause. The way they were suddenly proud of the exact thing they used to mock. But I didn't question it, because they were my parents, and I still believed that meant something. They explained everything. A small credit card, nothing big. They'd manage it for me, make the payments, handle everything. By the time I turned 18, I'd already have a strong credit history, a head start, an advantage. It's for your future, my dad said, sliding the paperwork toward me. You'll thank us someday, my mom added softly. And I wanted to believe that. I really did. So I signed. Every page they pointed to, every line they told me mattered. I even handed over my social security card when they asked for it. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Because trust, when you're raised on it, feels automatic. If I had known then what they were already doing behind my back, I don't think I would have slept that night. For the next 2 years, I didn't think about it. Not once. Why would I? They never mentioned it again. And I was busy building what I thought was my future. School. Work. Saving every dollar I earned at my part-time job. While everyone else spent their money on clothes and concerts, I saved. College wasn't going to pay for itself. I got into Ohio State.
Partial scholarship.
Still needed about $15,000 a year. But I wasn't scared. I had a plan. Savings. Work. Loans if necessary.
Manageable.
Responsible.
Controlled.
Everything my parents had never been. Looking back, that might have been the real problem. I was becoming everything they weren't. And somewhere along the way, they decided to use that. It was March of my senior year. I was 17, almost 18, and I figured it was time. Time to look at my credit. Just to understand it. Just to be prepared. I sat on my bed with my laptop, typing in the website I'd read about. My hands weren't shaking yet. My heart wasn't racing. I thought I was about to see something boring. Maybe one small account. Maybe nothing at all. The page loaded, and everything inside me went cold. There wasn't one credit card. There were 4. Not small ones either. 5,000. 8,000. 12,000. All maxed out. I remember staring at the screen, waiting for it to make sense. Waiting for it to correct itself. Waiting for reality to catch up with what I thought I knew. It didn't. Late payments. Over-limit fees. Cash advances. My name stamped across every single line. My credit score sat there in bold numbers. 487. I was 17 years old, and my life had already been wrecked by decisions I never made. My hands started shaking as I scrolled. The first account had been opened when I was 14. 14. I hadn't even had a driver's license yet. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was a pattern.
A system.
A betrayal that had been building for years. Right under my nose. I don't remember printing the report. I don't remember standing up. But somehow, I ended up walking downstairs, the papers clenched in my hand so tightly they crumpled at the edges. My parents were in the living room. Exactly where they always were. Dad in his recliner, Mom on the couch with her laptop. Normal.
Calm.
Untouched by the storm they had created. We need to talk, I said. And the moment they looked at me, really looked, I knew. They already knew what I had found. And that's when I understood something that would take me years to fully accept. This wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a war. I held up the papers. My mother's face changed first. Not into shock. Not confusion.
Recognition.
That was worse. My dad muted the TV slowly, like I had interrupted something inconvenient, instead of walking in with proof that they had stolen my future. "Sit down, honey," my mom said. Her voice was too soft. Too rehearsed. "Let us explain." I laughed once. It came out sharp and broken. "Explain what? How you opened credit cards in my name when I was 14? How you maxed them out? How you missed payments until my score dropped to 487? My dad's jaw tightened. "First of all," he said, "watch your tone." And that was the moment something inside me snapped. My tone? "You're upset," he said, like he was doing me a favor by staying calm. "But you don't understand the full picture." "I understand enough." "No," my mother said quickly. "You don't. We were helping you." "Helping me?" I nearly whispered. "You destroyed my credit before I was even old enough to use it." "Credit can be repaired," she said. Like she was talking about chipped paint. Like she hadn't just admitted she knew exactly what had happened. "The important thing," she continued, "is that we kept this family together. We kept a roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back." There it was. The bill. The invisible invoice they had apparently been keeping since the day I was born. I stared at her. "That was your job." My dad's face turned red. "Excuse me? You chose to have a child," I said, my voice shaking now. "I didn't choose to be born. Feeding me wasn't generosity. Housing me wasn't a favor. It was your responsibility." My mother flinched like I had slapped her. My father stood up. "You ungrateful little—" "Ungrateful," I cut in. "For what? For committing fraud in my name?" "It wasn't fraud," my mother snapped. "You signed paperwork." "I was 16, I said, "and you lied about what I was signing." They exchanged a look. A fast one. The kind guilty people share when they realize their first story isn't working. My dad exhaled and changed his tone. "Look, we know this looks bad. It is bad. We had expenses," he said. unexpected ones. Your broken arm, car repairs, that roof leak. Bills don't stop just because people are struggling. The first card was opened when I was 14. Silence. Before the roof leak. Before most of the things you're listing. My mother pressed her lips together. We always meant to pay it back. When? Neither of them answered. How much? I asked. How much debt is in my name? My dad looked away. My mother suddenly became very interested in the carpet. Tell me. Dad finally said it. About $30,000. The room tilted. $30,000. Not a mistake. Not one bad decision. $30,000 of my future burned to keep their lives warm. My mother leaned forward. But we're going to fix it. Every penny. You just need to be patient. Patient? I repeated. We're family, she said. That word used to mean safety. Now it sounded like a trap. I looked at both of them and realized the truth all at once. They had no plan. No money. No timeline. No remorse. Only excuses. I want it paid off immediately, I said. My dad actually laughed. With what money? I don't care. Sell something. Get a loan. Sell the house. My mother's eyes widened. Absolutely not. This is our home. And my name is mine. You're being dramatic, she said. You're acting like we ruined your life. You did. My father stepped closer. We raised you. We gave you everything. No, I said. You took everything and called it love. The argument went in circles for over an hour. They promised, they justified, they guilted, they cried, they blamed. By the end, I felt hollow. Not because they had convinced me, because they hadn't even tried to truly apologize. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room with my laptop open, learning words I never thought I'd need. Identity theft. Credit freeze. Fraud dispute. Police report. Restitution. The more I read, the colder I became. Not numb. Focus. By sunrise, I had printed every credit report I could find. I made a folder. Dates, accounts, balances, missed payments. If my parents wanted to treat me like a financial tool, then I was going to become their worst paperwork nightmare. The next morning, they acted like nothing had happened. My mom made pancakes. My dad read the newspaper. The smell of syrup made me sick. Then my dad lowered the paper and said, "We've been thinking." I looked up. "Since you're almost 18, my mom said brightly, and you have a job, maybe it's time you started contributing to household expenses. I stared at her. You want rent. $500 a month, my dad said. Very reasonable. For 1 second, I genuinely thought I had misheard. You put $30,000 of debt in my name, I said slowly. And now you want me to pay you rent? That's a separate issue, my mom said. No, it's not. My dad folded the paper. If you're going to be disrespectful, maybe you should find somewhere else to live. There it was. The threat. The one they thought would make me small again. Instead, I nodded. Fine. Both of them froze. I'll move out, I said. And I'll report everything. Police, credit bureaus, every company you used. My mother's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I looked straight at her. Watch me. The next few days were a blur of threats and tears. Mom said I was destroying the family. Dad said I was being manipulated. They offered payment plans with no numbers. Family therapy with a therapist they wanted to choose. Apologies that always ended with the word but. But we were desperate. But you don't understand. But we're your parents. I stopped listening. I had $8,000 saved from working. My coworker's older brother Jake needed a roommate. He was 20, quiet, steady, and had his own scars from family drama. The apartment wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms. Old carpet. A kitchen light that flickered when it rained. But when I saw the empty room, I almost cried. Because it was mine. On Saturday morning, while my parents were out, Jake pulled up in his truck. We loaded my life into cardboard boxes. Clothes. Books, my laptop, the folder of evidence. Not much for 17 years. Before I left, I placed a note on the kitchen table. Mom and Dad, I've moved out. I meant what I said. You have 48 hours to contact me with a real plan to pay back the debt and clear my credit. If you don't, I'm going to the police. You chose this. Your daughter, who deserved better than parents who stole from her. I stared at the note for a long moment. Then I walked out. And for the first time in my life, the fear behind me felt smaller than the road ahead. The first night in the apartment felt quiet in a way I didn't recognize. Not the kind of quiet that comes from people avoiding each other. Not the kind filled with tension you can feel in your chest. This was different. Honest. Jake handed me a spare set of keys and shrugged. It's not much, but it's safe. Safe. That word hit harder than I expected. I nodded, gripping the keys a little too tightly. It's perfect. The next 48 hours stretched longer than any time I could remember. I kept my phone on the table. Face up. Volume on. Waiting. For a call, a text, anything. An apology. A plan. Proof that somewhere underneath all the lies, there were still parents who cared enough to fix what they broke. But my phone stayed silent. Jake didn't push. He gave me space, but every now and then he'd check in. You okay? I always said yes. Not because it was true. Because I didn't know how to explain the feeling of watching your entire past collapse and still hoping it might rebuild itself. On Sunday night, he sat across from me on the floor, leaning back against the couch. They're not going to call, he said gently. I looked up. You don't know that. He held my gaze. I do. I hated how calm he sounded. How certain. You don't know them, I said. No, he agreed. But I know people who don't take responsibility. And I know what it looks like when someone's waiting for them to suddenly change. My throat tightened. They're my parents. And that's exactly why it's harder, he said. Because part of you still believes they'll become who you needed them to be. I didn't answer. Because he was right. And I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Monday morning came. Exactly 48 hours after I left the note. I checked my phone one last time. Nothing. No missed calls. No messages. No plan. Just silence.
Final. Absolute. Empty.
I exhaled slowly. Okay, I whispered to myself. Then we're done waiting. The police station was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, neutral walls, a front desk that looked like it had seen 1,000 stories worse than mine. Still, my hands trembled as I approached. I'd like to report identity theft, I said. The officer behind the desk glanced up. Something in my voice must have told her this wasn't simple. She nodded. Have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly. Officer Martinez was calm. Steady. The kind of person who didn't react with shock, but with understanding. As if she'd seen this before. Too many times. Walk me through everything, she said. So I did. From the moment I signed the paperwork at 16, to the night I found the credit report, to the silence after my ultimatum, I handed over the folder. Every document, every account, every date. She flipped through it carefully. Then she looked at me. You did the right thing coming here. That was the first time anyone had said that. Not, you're overreacting. Not, they're your parents. Not, maybe give them time. Just, you did the right thing. My chest tightened. What they did, she continued, is a crime. Identity theft, fraud, possibly multiple counts. Hearing it said out loud made it real, in a way nothing else had. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family issue.
A crime.
They're going to say I gave permission, I said quietly. They already have, she replied. But you were a minor. Legally, you can't consent to credit agreements. That works in your favor. For the first time since this started, I felt something shift. Not relief.
Control.
After filing the report, she walked me through the next steps. Disputing accounts, contacting credit bureaus, freezing my credit. One more thing, she added. If they still have access to your personal information, you need to lock everything down immediately. I nodded. I will. The credit freeze was easier than I expected. 3 calls.
Identity verification.
Done. No one could open anything in my name again. Not even them. When the last confirmation email came through, I stared at the screen for a long time. It felt powerful, like locking a door that should have always been mine. Then came the calls to the credit card companies. Capital One, Chase, Discover, American Express. Each conversation started the same way. My name is Emily Carter. I'm reporting fraudulent accounts opened when I was a minor. And each time, the response was almost identical. Professional. Calm. Surprisingly kind. We'll investigate. If the accounts were opened fraudulently, they'll be removed. Processing time is 30 to 60 days. 30 to 60 days. It sounded like forever. But compared to the years they had taken from me, it felt manageable. 3 days after I moved out, my phone finally rang. I stared at the screen. Mom. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Hello? Her voice came through shaky, like she'd been crying. Honey, we need to talk. I closed my eyes briefly. I'm listening. Can you come home, please? We can fix this, as a family. I looked around the small apartment. The peeling paint, the flickering light. And yet, I am home, I said quietly. And I gave you 48 hours. I know, she said quickly. We just needed time. Did you come up with a plan? Silence. Then, we spoke to a credit counselor. Of course they did. And? They said it's possible to pay everything off, she continued. We can set up payment plans. It might take a few years, but we can do it. How many years? Another pause. 5, maybe 6? I let out a slow breath. Even now, they were still pretending. Still hoping vague promises would be enough. Mom, I said, my voice steady now. I've already filed a police report. Silence exploded on the other end. You what? I've disputed every account. This isn't something we can handle privately anymore. You called the police? Her voice rose sharply. On your own parents? You committed crimes against me. What did you expect? We expected you to act like family, she snapped. Families don't steal from each other. We didn't steal, we borrowed. Without my knowledge or consent, that's stealing. You're being dramatic. The phone shifted. My dad's voice cut in, cold and sharp. You're making a huge mistake. I didn't respond. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to this family? You should have thought about that before you did this. A pause. Then, fine, he said. If you want to destroy this family, that's your choice. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've done. And then, he hung up. I stared at the phone, waiting for something.
Guilt. Regret.
Fear. But what I felt instead was relief. Because they had just made it clear. They weren't sorry. They weren't changing. And they weren't going to fix anything. Over the next few weeks, everything started moving. The investigation. The disputes. The slow rebuilding of something I didn't think I'd ever get back.
Control.
Detective Williams took over my case. We've interviewed your parents, he told me during one call. They're claiming you gave them permission. I was a minor. Exactly. That's going to matter. Then he added something that made my stomach drop. We've identified additional accounts. Additional? Yes, more than what you originally found. Of course there were more. They didn't just make one mistake, he said. This was systematic. I closed my eyes. Let the anger settle. Then open them again. Good, I said. Then build the strongest case you can. There was a brief pause. Then, that's exactly what we're doing. Around the same time, Jake mentioned my situation to his sister, Emma.
A paralegal.
She connected me with an attorney. Sarah Chen. We met in a quiet office that smelled faintly of coffee and paper. She reviewed my documents for less than 10 minutes before looking up. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen. My chest tightened. What are my options? Criminal charges will be handled by the state, she said. But we can also file a civil lawsuit. For what? Damages, she said simply. Financial harm, emotional distress, and we can request a permanent court order preventing them from ever using your identity again. That last part. That mattered more than anything. How much would it cost? I'll take it on contingency, she said. You don't pay unless we win. I didn't hesitate. Let's do it. 2 months later, Detective Williams called again. They're being charged, he said. My heart stopped. Identity theft, credit card fraud, conspiracy. I sank into the couch. They'll be arrested later this week. I didn't speak for a moment. Not because I was unsure. Because I was finally sure. Okay, I said. The arrests happened on a Thursday. I found out the next day. When my phone rang. Mom. Again. This time, from jail. Are you happy now? She asked through tears. I stared at the wall. No, I said calmly. I would have been happy if you hadn't stolen from me. Your father and I spent the night in jail because of you. Because of your choices. We're your parents. I inhaled slowly, then said the words I had been building toward for weeks. You're criminals who happen to share my DNA.
Silence.
Then, the lawyer says we could go to prison. Good. I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. The trial was set for early spring. By then, nearly a year had passed since the night I sat on my bed staring at a credit score that didn't belong to me. A year since I realized that the people who were supposed to protect me were the ones I needed protection from. In that time, a lot had changed. My credit score had climbed, slowly, painfully, from 487 to 650. Not perfect, but mine. For the first time, every number on that report reflected my decisions, not theirs. I was working full-time now. College had been postponed. Not abandoned, just delayed. That was the word I used when people asked. Delayed. It sounded better than taken from me. Jake had become more than a roommate. He was steady, reliable, the kind of person who didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Sometimes we'd sit on the balcony at night, the city humming quietly around us, and talk about everything except my case. And sometimes we talked about nothing at all, which I realized was its own kind of peace. His family had slowly pulled me in, too. His mom insisted I come over for Sunday dinners. His younger sister argued with me about movies like we'd known each other for years. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no hidden agendas. It felt foreign and healing. You know what's weird? I said one night, staring out at the streetlights. What? Jake asked. I keep waiting to feel guilty. He didn't even hesitate. Do you? I shook my head. I feel lighter. He nodded. That's because you stopped carrying something that was never yours. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and quiet judgment. I sat beside Sarah, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. Across the room, my parents sat with their lawyer. They looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just less powerful, like the illusion had finally cracked. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father did, but there was no apology in his eyes, only resentment. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of my life being laid out like evidence, because that's what it had become, evidence. The prosecutor moved methodically, account by account, charge by charge. Each credit card, each forged signature, each missed payment, each dollar they had taken without asking. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise. And somehow, that made it hit harder. The defense tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, a family issue, a mistake that had gotten out of hand. They always intended to pay it back, their lawyer said. I almost laughed. Intent didn't erase damage. Intent didn't rebuild credit. Intent didn't give me back the years I spent planning a future that had already been sabotaged. Then came the testimonies. Bank representatives, credit card companies, Detective Williams, each one confirming the same thing. This wasn't confusion. This was fraud. And then, my father took the stand. He adjusted his tie like this was just another conversation he could control. "We were struggling financially," he said. "We did what we had to do for our family." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Did you inform your daughter that you were opening credit accounts in her name?" "No." "Did you inform her when those accounts became delinquent?" "No." "Did you make consistent payments on those accounts?" "We tried." The prosecutor held up a document. 4 payments, across 3 years, totaling $340 on $30,000 of debt. Is that your definition of trying? My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer, because there wasn't an answer that could save him. My mother's testimony was worse. She cried. A lot. Tears streaming, voice breaking, hands shaking. "We did everything for her," she said. "We didn't want her to grow up struggling." The prosecutor didn't raise her voice. "Did you tell your daughter what you were doing?" "No." "Did you ask for her consent?" "She was just a child." "Exactly," the prosecutor said. "A child, who legally could not consent. Yet you used her identity for financial gain." My mother sobbed harder. But even then, she never said the words I had waited so long to hear. "I'm sorry." When it was my turn, my heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. I took the stand, swore the oath, sat down, and looked straight ahead. Not at them, at the truth. I told my story, not dramatically, not angrily, just honestly. "I trusted them," I said. "I signed what they told me to sign because I believed they were helping me." I paused, let the silence settle. When I checked my credit report, I realized my future had already been decided for me. The prosecutor nodded. "How did that affect you?" I thought about that question, really thought about it. "It made me question everything," I said. "Not just my finances, my reality, my relationship with them, what trust even means." I swallowed. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that they did it, knowing I wouldn't understand, knowing I couldn't stop them. The courtroom was silent, and for the first time, I felt heard. After my testimony, Sarah squeezed my hand. "You did exactly what you needed to do." I nodded, but inside, something had shifted. Not anger, not pain. Closure. Or at least, the beginning of it. The verdict came the next day. Guilty, on all major counts. Identity theft, credit card fraud, conspiracy. My mother cried. My father stared straight ahead. And I just sat there, breathing. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for something to break. The sentencing came weeks later. Probation, restitution, and a permanent court order. They were never allowed to use my identity again. Ever. The civil case followed. We pursued damages, not just for the money, but for the time, the stress, the loss of opportunity. The judge ruled in my favor, $75,000, and enforcement of the injunction. People asked me afterward if it felt like revenge. It didn't. Revenge is loud, messy, satisfying in a way that fades. This was quiet, steady, final. The last time I saw my parents was outside the courthouse. My mother looked like she wanted to say something. My father didn't look at me at all. I waited, just for a second, for something, anything. But nothing came. So I nodded once and walked away. I used to think closure meant getting answers, an apology, an explanation that made everything make sense. I was wrong. Closure is realizing you don't need any of that. Now, when I check my credit report, I don't just see numbers. I see proof that I took something broken and rebuilt it, that I chose truth over comfort, that I stopped letting people define my worth just because they shared my blood. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 19 now, And the strange thing about the moment your life finally comes back together is that it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like peace.